Wow, here we go. Right. So I'm just going to introduce myself again. My name is Doug Belshaw. I'm from a co-op called We Are Open. My colleague Laura cannot make it, sadly, today. If you are sitting by yourself, now is the time to make friends with somebody on the same row as you, or to move forward, or to just make friends, because you're going to be spending 3 days together. So now's the time to introduce yourself to other people. If you have a laptop in front of you, that's great. If you have a phone in front of you, that's also awesome. You're going to need to use it today. This is a workshop. I know that this room isn't set up ideally for a workshop, but we're going to make use of what we've got. So if you're expecting a workshop about using AI tools, badge creation, doing a bit of hands-on stuff, you're in the right place. If you're interested in something else, just stay anyway. All of the slides are going to be online. I'll put the link on the screen at the end again. And I'm from a co-op called We Are Open. So there's 3 of us who are part of the co-op, myself, Laura, and John. There's my wife, who's a cooperator, Brian, whose images you're going to see peppered throughout this slide deck, and then Anna, who was an intern with us and is also a cooperator of ours. And the kind of things that we do, well, we do lots of things. So we have this broad tent of stuff, which we call untangling your organizational spaghetti. We met at Mozilla, the Mozilla Foundation. I was on the Open Badges team back in the day. And so I've been unreasonably excited about a metadata standard now for about 13 years. So today, and I'm not going to read this out, we're looking at using AI tools to synthesize and map peer feedback against popular and relevant skills taxonomies. We're going to use 3. We're going to use ONET from the US, ESCO, which is an EU one, and the OECD, which is an international framework for skills. You're going to need to use your brain. I know that's a difficult thing at this time in the morning without caffeination, and especially given some of the results that have been happening in the world overnight. You will need a phone or a laptop or a tablet, and that kind of thinky face is just you kind of pondering stuff and maybe talking to the person next to you. So, in the very limited time that we've got together today, I'm doing this welcome. I'm going to do a very brief introduction to open recognition, because for some of you, it might be a new concept. I'm then going to demo a GPT, a kind of custom AI chatbot, which I've created for mapping skills. You'll then get some experience of using that. Then we're going to look at creating badges using AI. Then you'll have some experience of doing that. And then we'll have a chance for some questions and discussion, and then we'll move on. Has anyone come into this session with like a burning question or something that they need to say? Because I don't want to go all the way through this workshop with you having this burning question just eating away at you. So sometimes people come into sessions and they need something answering. If that's the case for you, now's the time to ask that question. Everyone needs more coffee. Cool, right. So really quickly, this is open recognition. Every time we issue a credential, what we're actually doing is recognizing somebody else. And that might be an organization recognizing somebody. It might be a person recognizing somebody else. But every single time we issue a credential, what surrounds it is recognition. And when we're talking about open recognition, what we're really talking about is recognizing the rights of individuals, communities, and territories to apply their own labels and definitions, not just kind of accepting other people's labels and definitions, but being able to apply their own. And that's really important when it comes to skills frameworks, which is what we're going to talk about in a moment. And the reason that it's really important for people like us in this room is that we often have the kinds of careers which aren't linear. Our type of careers tend to go in lots of interesting directions. So when somebody says, well, how did you get to do the job that you're doing now? It's kind of a difficult story to tell, because it's not just a ladder that you've gone up. It's more like a climbing wall where sometimes you've gone across, you've traversed it in some kind of way. So when we're trying to talk about skills frameworks, this makes telling the story quite difficult. Sometimes, though, it's easier for other people to be able to tell your story because they've got a slightly more objective view of who you are, and they can tell your story slightly differently. So sometimes peer recognition in relation to skills frameworks can work better than self-recognition. There are different kinds of badges and credentials that you can issue. You don't have to have micro-credentials issued by an institution. You can have badges that are issued by yourself. You can have badges which are issued by peers, and then they can be endorsed after the fact, which makes a whole world of possibility for open recognition. I'm going to be doing another presentation tomorrow about a project we've been doing in the US with refugees and immigrants. Please do come along to that. But this particular image was created by Brian Mathers for that project. And there's lots of different ways in which we represent ourselves. And that's what we're trying to talk about today. Finally then, before I show you the tool that I'd like you to use, just to say that there's different levels of recognition that we use when we're giving recognition to others. There's organizational recognition, there's societal recognition, there's universal recognition. But what we're really talking about today in this workshop is interpersonal recognition, the type of recognition where I, as a person, are recognizing somebody else. And when we're doing that, we've got certain gestures. We've got the hat tip, we've got the salute, we've got the thumbs up, we're giving people flowers, we've got a little pat on the head, we've got a round of applause, and they all mean different things. So when we're thinking about capturing that kind of recognition, there's different ways in which we can do it. So just to say that there's a difference between micro-credentials, which some of you in this room might be used to, which is more like a staircase, a very structured kind of credit-bearing way of doing things, and more like putting artwork on a wall. I've just been talking to Noah about art just now. It's more of a decentralized system. It's more informal. It moves around a lot. It's more kind of community-driven. So what we're doing here is we're weaving and braiding together intention, a relationship between people, and heavily depending on the context within which we're giving the recognition. So I wanted to give that as an introduction to open recognition. People are going to go into much more depth in this conference, as you'd expect, but just to give you a really high-level overview of what open recognition means to me. So with that in mind, what I'm going to show you now is a GPT. Now, for those of you who haven't come across that term before, it's using a tool like OpenAI's ChatGPT and training it a little bit more to be able to respond to people's input in a structured way so that you get particular results back. And the example I'm going to give you here, you're going to click to get started, and then it's going to explain what it's doing. It's then going to ask you a series of questions, and you are going to reply to that either as yourself, or you're going to put in some fake data or reply as if you're somebody else, whatever you want to do. So when you put in this data, it's going to ask you questions such as, what experience do you have? What skills might you have gained from different jobs that you've had? That kind of thing. And it's going to follow up with a series of questions. And then once it's done that, it's going to map your skills against 3 skills frameworks. The one that I mentioned before, ONET in the US, ESCO, which is a European framework, and then also the OECD one. And the value of that is that when you're trying to describe your skills to other people, it matters the context in which you're doing it. If I'm trying to explain my skills in a British context, I'm going to use different words than if I'm doing it in an American context or a European context or sometimes more internationally. And what this allows you to do is to map those skills in a way which is aligned with those taxonomies. Now, as ever, it's easier to just let you have a go with it rather than me endlessly talk about it. So what you're going to do now, if you've got a laptop or any kind of screen in front of you, is you're going to go to this link here. You can use the QR code, or you can go to bit.ly/skills-mapper. I'll walk around just to make sure everybody can do that. And we're going to spend about 10 minutes looking at this, making sure everyone gets there, and just see what's useful about this and also what the limitations are, because it's not going to be perfect in all situations for all people. Okay, well, I'll wander around. Let's have a go with it. Let's see how we get on with it. Feel free to turn to the person next to you and have a chat with them and see, compare results. I'll wander around now, and let's spend about 10 minutes doing that. Sorry, one thing that I didn't mention is that you will need a ChatGPT account to do this. Now, I'm betting that a lot of people in the room have already got one, because personal accounts on ChatGPT make up most of the market share as opposed to business accounts. But if you don't have a ChatGPT account, it's free. You can sign up. If you'd rather not, that's fine as well. You can look over somebody else's shoulder. I can show you it as well. But you will need a ChatGPT account to be able to use this particular skills mapper. Okay, there's some more that I'd like to show you, so we'll probably just stop there for now. Did anyone have any particular reflections on that? Anything which they thought was particularly good? Anything they had questions about, or anything that they felt needed quite a lot of improvement? That kind of traffic light feedback is quite useful.
Okay, one thing that I'm noticing is some of the prompts are maybe assuming that we know a little bit more than we know. And so I think for a lot of people, it might require a little bit more scaffolding when it's saying things like, you know, for example, any certifications or specialized training or particular projects where you apply these. I think some more like specific examples might be helpful scaffolding to people who the type of people who aren't already in this room.
Thank you, Noah. Anybody else want to give any just reflections before we move on?
It's interesting that like we're all looking at this post thinking, but for the learners coming through from schools and things like that, they're actually using ChatGPT to actually learn stuff and things like that. So the way that we think and answer these questions for us in this generation, which is in, you know, with our life experience, it's going to be interesting to see in the next few years how our future RPL learners are going to be able to do this.
Yeah, it's really interesting. One of the things about open recognition, which distinguishes it from RPL, recognition of prior learning, is that it recognizes what's happening right now, not just what's happened in the past, and also future intentions. So what do you want to do in the future is a form of recognition too. A third one, before I move on and just show you an AI badge creator. Does anyone else have any reflections? Just get on with it, Doug. Okay, cool. All right, so it's probably worth me saying before I move on to this next bit that I am platform agnostic and always have been. I'm not recommending a particular platform. I'm just showing the particular affordances of this particular platform. I'm sure that other platforms will have AI generation tools in the near future, and whether this is useful or not is entirely up to you. So this is an app called Navigator. It allows you to have an AI badge assistant. And again, sometimes this is useful, sometimes it's not. I find sometimes that using AI without having thought about what I want to do can be actually not very useful. And without a first draft, sometimes AI is guiding you, and I don't like that. But sometimes people just need a little bit of a prompt. It's the same way in which if you present someone with a blank piece of paper or a blank wiki page, they get a bit stuck. So sometimes, instead of starting from scratch, somebody might want to start from an AI badge assistant. So on this particular platform, you just describe the achievement that you want to badge. Now, the little buttons at the top are learned from previous things that I've done on the platform. So it says, led a workshop on cooperative governance and open source collaboration methodologies. That's very kind of germane to what I do, but you would have different suggestions. So for example, if I type in active participation at an in-person workshop at ePIC2024 in Paris, then I might get something like this. It'll create the badge, and then it'll come up with, this badge was awarded to individuals who actively participated at the in-person workshop, yada, yada, yada. That's the description. Then there's some criteria about attending and participating and completing any assignments, and then it tags it. And on this platform, it uses a tool called Lightcast. So that's the taxonomy that it's using there. And then if I press edit, again, on this particular platform, there's a badge framework which says that, well, we're going to use circular badges for informal learning, hexagonal ones for training and certification, and different shapes for different kinds of things. So the idea is, on this platform, and again, I'm not recommending it, I'm just showing it to you, it allows you to scaffold people's badge creation journey. And as somebody who spent the last 13 years trying to help people create and issue badges, I know that sometimes they get hung up on particular stages of the process, like, I don't know what to call it, or what's the difference between description and criteria, or what shape should it be, or more likely, marketing are telling me it's going to take me 6 months to be able to issue this badge, like all of these different parts of the particular journey. So I'm going to give you a chance to have a look at this platform. Like the ChatGPT example, you will need to sign up to have an account. It's navigator.app, or you can scan the QR code. Give it a go, see if it's useful. I should imagine that most platforms will have this kind of approach quite soon if they haven't already. And so the idea is like, what does it allow you to do, which is good? And also, what does it miss out, or what does it direct the learner to do or the badge issuer to do, which is not so useful? So that's what we're looking at now. Does anyone have any questions about that before I let you loose, as they say on the platform? All right then. So I think what we're going to need to do here, if we're going to have a decent discussion in this kind of room, is I'm going to have to ask for some volunteers to be mic runners. So does anyone feel like running around the place, not literally, walking quickly with a microphone for when people would like to speak so that other people can hear them? Thank you, Phil. Anybody else? Thank you very much. Okay, now, if in a perfect world, we would have longer than 45 minutes to be able to investigate these tools. We'd be able to go in depth with them, and we'd be able to give an in-depth kind of feedback to each other, really investigate what's going on. That isn't the case today. We're going to have a very surface level introduction to this GPT skills mapper and to this, this AI badge creator. That being said, knowing that these, for most of you, are going to be surface level kind of reflections and feedback and thoughts, let's just kick off the discussion by someone sticking up their hand and just telling us what you think about either of these tools, how they might be able to be used in your context, or what questions you've got about them at the moment. Who's going to kick us off to start off? Thanks, Wendy.
I just thought it was interesting when I registered as an organisation, it asked what I wanted to recognise, but it only gave me a choice of one thing. And I would have thought that many organisations would want to recognise. So, for example, I wanted to pick informal learning, event participation, courses, and just so the idea that it was binary, I just found interesting.
Oh, I see. So when you signed up, you couldn't tick multiple boxes. You had to want to recognise people for one particular thing. Interesting, yeah. I think that's quite common, isn't it? Like the fact that we don't realize there's a multiplicity of literacies, of recognitions, of all that kind of thing as well. Yeah. Okay, hands up for anyone else who's got any reflections or questions or comments or thoughts about how they might use this in their context. I'm just going to go to this gentleman over here. Thank you.
Jeremy McQuick. I thought it was really interesting. I asked it to produce a badge for me as a tired conference participant and as a non-tired conference participant, and it reduced the number of sessions I had to go to, which I thought was kind of interesting. If I'm fatigued, 80%. If I'm not fatigued, 100%, which made me think in the prolification of badging, if AI can create all of these different sort of variations, are we actually able to read and process the nuances of what's actually going in these descriptions? Because it produces a lot of content that looks really clean, but there's a nuance in there about, am I fatigued or not fatigued? Did I actually go to 80%? What evidence would I have for that? So it's giving me a lot to think about in terms of, we can create things really fast, but can I process those as the human on the other side of it?
Absolutely, yeah. Two things about that. First of all, what are the unintended consequences of self-identifying as a tired person? If you're then trying to present yourself for employment, for example, that's the first thing. The second thing is there's long been an objection to badges, like the proliferation of badges. What happens when there's 1,000 badges? Somebody asked me the other day. And my answer to that is usually, well, we all have more forms of recognition and more forms of credentialing than we show when we go for a job. My mother has a theology degree, which she has never used. She's never thought to put that down on her CV because it's never been relevant to a job that she's got. So I would hope that the curation of badges, the curation of recognition, is something that we would encourage learners, potential employees to be able to do. Yeah.
I was just wondering, it's actually with the ChatGPT tool, how easy is it to customize the prompts in the ChatGPT tool? The reason I'm asking is, as I was looking at it, I was thinking, this is actually quite complex language and requires you to have an understanding. And I was thinking, if we were using it, say, for high schools, what would it look like if we translated it into teenage language? Or And I just wondered how easy it would be to actually change the context of the prompts.
Well, we could talk for the rest of the day about this kind of thing, and maybe you might want to talk to Catherine because she's been doing some work around other AI models as well. I chose this one because it's the one that I've been spending the most time with. There's other AIs, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, yada, yada, yada. In terms of answering your question for this one, super easy. So you train the GPT in the same way that you have a conversation with ChatGPT. So it's conversational. You fill in, you say, like, could you use this particular reading level, for example? You could change it to that. Also, the button that you press to start off the chat, what I realized from feedback from people when I was creating this was that people didn't know what to say to start the conversation, which is a common thing, just like I was talking about with the AI badge creator. People don't know how to get started. So instead of having a multiplicity of options, or instead of having a blank box, I gave them one button to press, which would then generate some text and ask them a question. So that then you knew what to do first. But you're unlikely to get this kind of thing right first time in the same way that you're unlikely to get anything right first time. So you kind of have to iterate, test it, see what happens, roll it out, that kind of thing. Yeah, thanks, Wendy.
Well, I've got a question, if it's possible.
Go for it, Phil.
It's actually very related to the one that Denise just asked, and that is when we've been doing some usability studies to these things, the expectations of what the user brings to the problem are all over the map. So we use the word profile, and they expected the system to generate a profile for them and put it in some social media.
Oh, okay.
Because that's what they're accustomed to. And so I guess the message is this kind of training that you're talking about is something that we really have to take seriously and then test it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course, the usual warnings go along with any use of generative AI in that it will make some stuff up if you don't check. I was doing some work the other day. It made up references as usual. You have to double check things, etc. I'm going to go back to the start, and I'm going to make sure that the link is on the screen in case you want to go back, have a look at this presentation, get the links, that kind of stuff. The link for these slides is bit.ly/WAO-EPIC2024-workshop. Does anyone have any closing reflections, any closing questions, anything at all they want to say before we all head out and get some caffeine? Yes, in the middle. Do you want to give your name first, please?
Hi, Bethany Pridmore. How long did it take you to craft your ChatGPT?
That is a difficult question to answer. It didn't take me very long to begin with. You can get things up and running really quickly. It's a bit like any kind of learning design, I guess. Like the initial idea comes with a wing and a prayer, and then you create it, and then you put it in front of people, and it doesn't quite work as you were expecting, and therefore it takes lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of iterations. So I shared this on LinkedIn. Wendy gave it a try on LinkedIn, gave me some feedback via DM. Other people shared. I shared on Blue Sky, on Mastodon. I shared it with friends in my co-op. I shared it with friends in my network. My wife had a look at it and rolled her eyes. That kind of stuff. So it takes not very long to set it up, but maybe quite a while to iterate. And that is a great place to end, I think. Iteration being the key, having the human in the loop for all of this AI stuff and not just like whacking badges into the world because you can. So on that, thank you very much for your time and attention. Have a look at these slides and I'll see you out there.